Afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Developing the Next Generation of Women Healthcare IT Leaders and Driving Transformational Digital Change, a Health System CIO Media Inc. production sponsored by Persistent Systems. My name is Kate Gamble. I'm Managing Editor and Director of Social Media, and I will be your moderator for today. We encourage you to participate by submitting your questions and comments in the Q&A box. Okay, next slide. We're going to have what I really believe will be a great discussion with our panelists. Naomi Rapoza Lenane, CIO and VP of Information Services at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Kristin Myers, EVP and Chief Digital and Information Officer and Dean for Digital and Information Technology at Mount Sinai Health System, and Nitha Puthran, SVP of Cloud Infrastructure and Security at Persistent Systems. So we'll go for about 35-40 minutes in our panel discussion, and then we will take your questions during the Q&A portion. Okay, so let's get started. If you want to give us an overview of your organization and your role. Naomi, let's start with you.
Great, thanks, Kate. Naomi Lenane, CIO here at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. We're located in Boston, Massachusetts, and have 5 regional campuses throughout Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire. We are both a cancer research institute and a cancer hospital in one, which is a unique organization. And I'm mostly responsible for all of the infrastructure, clinical revenue cycle, business systems related to hospital operations. I sometimes say it's easier to say what I'm not responsible for, and that is research and informatics, data analytics. So pretty much everything else, philanthropy, you name it, it's all my responsibility. Just don't come to me for your data and analytics needs. Kristin, might want to go next?
Yeah, Kristin.
Sure. Thank you for having me here. My name is Kristin Myers. I'm the Chief Digital and Information Officer and Dean for Digital and IT at Mount Sinai Health System. The Mount Sinai Health System is a New York-based system with our School of Medicine, the Icahn School of Medicine. We have around 8 hospital campuses, 11.3 billion in revenue, and my departmental vision is really to deliver transformational technology to drive innovation and optimize services while improving the experience of the communities we serve. And so anything technology related in the organization falls under my purview.
Okay. Great. And Nitha?
Thank you, Kate, and thank you all to the co-panelists. My name is Nitha Puthran, based out of New Jersey. Persistent is a digital engineering and an enterprise modernization partner. We just touched $1 billion in revenue. It was a huge milestone that we celebrated. We are a services organization, so to say. If I had to tell you a little bit about the organization and my role, and contextualize my role, we are a matrixed organization. So I'm fortunate to be working with multiple verticals or domains. Obviously, the first one is healthcare, life sciences. Second one is financial services. Third one is ISV. And the last one is media and technology, or emerging verticals, as I call it. Now, I have a horizontal role, and that's why I say I'm fortunate. I cut across all these 4 verticals, and so bring horizontal services related to cloud, infrastructure, and security globally for our customers. We provide services out of 19 countries, distinct countries, and within each of these countries, we have multiple locations or delivery locations or delivery centers, as they say. But my objective is to provide or to partner with customers to provide digital transformation in the business that they are in. Nice meeting all of you. Thank you, Kate. Back to you.
Thank you. Okay. So let's get started with our first question. Why did you choose a career in healthcare IT? Were you concerned that tech was a male-dominated field and you might have a challenging time? And do you feel your road to success has been more challenging because of your gender? So big questions. Naomi, can you start?
Sure, happy to start off. I'm not sure I chose a career in healthcare IT. I think it chose me at one point. So I will say sort of back when I was coming up the ranks, this wasn't a career in that there weren't majors, in college or master's programs. All of those things sort of came later. So, I wouldn't say I sort of actively said, I'm going to go do this thing. I really got involved from a hospital workflow perspective, really trying to think about how to make, the processes better and different for users. And that's really what drew me to the work as I sort of fell into it. I wasn't concerned at the time that it was sort of male dominated. And I'm not sure my process was challenging, but I do think there was probably aspects of it that moved slower than maybe if I was a male in the field. And I think some of that had to be based on the fact that, many women think you might just get tapped on the shoulder if you work hard enough. And if you sort of do a really great job, somebody's just going to offer you the next thing. And that did happen to me a little bit early in my career. And it wasn't until sort of later that I started to speak with other women, maybe not in technology, but in leadership positions in healthcare, and started to ask questions about sort of, well, how do you move up and what does that mean? And how did you get where you're going? That I realized that I sort of had to sort of speak up a bit more than I think I had originally expected. And so, I do think that some of those challenges may have been gender specific, more things that I might have put on myself, sort of not realizing the whole speaking up piece of it. I will mention that I sort of at one point actively said to the CIO at Dana-Farber, I want to be the CIO at Dana-Farber, and his response was, oh, like he had no idea that would have been my goal. And so if I hadn't said those words out loud, he would have not known to sort of, help me get to my goals or help me achieve my goals. So, I do think I didn't go into it saying I'm worried that it's a male dominated field, but I do think there may have been things that I sort of held myself back early on and luckily work with some amazing women leaders here at Dana-Farber who helped me see the error of my ways and really encouraged me to ask for what I was looking for next.
Yeah, really interesting. And we'll get into that a little bit more later about, having mentors and others who helped. But really, really interesting. I like how IT chose you. Kristin, can you answer this question from your perspective?
Sure. So I went to college. I was going to be a lawyer, and so did law and technology dual degree. But, with the technology background, that was something that I felt, passionate about pursuing. And, healthcare, I think it was a compelling opportunity, quite frankly, to make a difference. And, I've been in healthcare IT for over 20 years, and, I'm going to stay in the field for my entire career because I know every single day that, the team and I make a positive difference to our patients and our educators and, our clinicians in the organization. But, when I chose tech, I knew it would be challenging because, the field is male dominated. And, I was only one of two women who did technology and law as a dual degree in college. And, I was the only woman who got the CISO certification at Carnegie Mellon even a few years ago. So I definitely think the road to success has been more challenging because of gender. And, there are systemic barriers and biases that, hinder women's progress and limit opportunities. I think that the bias is definitely more apparent years ago, earlier in my career, but there's been a positive shift over the last few years. And I think there's more awareness and a stronger push for gender equity and equality in society and in the workforce. And I want to recognize and thank Mount Sinai because they've been such a strong and public advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, the sponsorship that, has been shown towards me by, many of our leaders and also female leaders in the organization has been tremendous.
Yeah. Interesting. Nitha, what about you?
Like I said, Kate, in my introduction, I have the opportunity of working across verticals. So I'm going to kind of respond to it, not from a healthcare perspective, but more from an IT perspective. Okay. And I liked it. I was passionate about technology. So I chose to, pursue my career. Honestly, I don't think, and maybe definitely today not, I don't think it's a male-dominated field. I did not think of it that way when I came in. I was focused on the goal, so to say, and didn't see what was happening on the sidelines or the buzz and so on and so forth. So there would have been challenges, I would say more biases, and my personality, the way it is, irrespective of this discussion or any other, I would just dismiss or deal with things then and there. And so it never bothered me. I never let it linger in the background, foreground, etc. So yes, I think there are challenges. I've heard from women colleagues and peers that there are challenges. And I tend to do more of coaching for them rather than, I like to do what is in my control. And so I've taken that as a way to deal with, the situation or these topics.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. We're definitely going to get more into that. And I think that kind of segues nicely into our next question, which is, talking about how you've helped women succeed in your work environment. And Kristin, you talked about how Mount Sinai has had a good environment as far as promoting diversity. So can you talk a little bit about more of that and how that's affected you and others?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at the executive leadership level. We have an executive board for diversity and inclusion across the health system. And, now that I'm in my position, I'm able to actively participate and, promote DEI events. And, I serve as the corporate leader for our anti-racism roadmap program also. And, we also have formal mentorships, a mentorship program across the health system, specifically for women, as well as the Black Executive Mentorship Program. Within our department, we also have internships, and we even have a women-specific internship called Breakthrough Tech for undergrad students. I think that, there are lots of forums where we get, a lot of active support from the health system. But I also think it is up to us to be role models in the organization and to be making sure that, when we have new hires and promotions, that, we're ensuring there's a diverse pool of candidates to consider for new positions and promotions.
Yeah. And I guess that gets back to really building the pipeline, probably, which is a discussion in and of itself, but yeah, such a big part of it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's one of our biggest challenges. I mean, there are just, less females that apply to technology roles, and, even a lower percentage that apply to infrastructure or cybersecurity or data science. And I think that that's where we need to focus, is on the pipeline and, foster really an early promotion of women into these types of technology fields with the internships, for those in high school and college.
Yeah. And Nitha, you talked about some of the coaching, and can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So and I think, you in your question here, I also see about, how has technology evolved, right? So coming to the coach, and I'll just tee up the two together, but coming to the coaching part, I think the way the need to focus on the goal and be prepared for that, right? Often I see not only women, but colleagues who are very interested in a role, but they're not well prepared to kind of handle the same. And this coaching that I impart, again, not only to my women colleagues and but to everybody on what you need to have to accomplish that goal or role, right? Then there's an aspect of coaching related to biases that keep lingering, in minds of my women colleagues. And so I kind of do that to ad hoc sessions. We have a coffee on cloud session that I take for colleagues, that can talk about technology and what kind of trainings do we need, how rigorous it is, what is the amount of time that you need to devote when you are aspiring for a role or a certification, and so on and so forth. So that is something that I feel really has benefited a few of them. And here I believe that even if you make an impact, even if you change the lives of a handful of people, I think it's big. But yeah, some of those offline coaching does help in spreading the message and kind of helping colleagues think of how what principles have I embraced well on my journey to where I am today.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff there. And Naomi, do you want to try to address the part of the question where we see, how do you see tech jobs changing over time, and do you think it will address inequities?
I think one of the challenges, and even sort of in the question, is that it sort of implies that, if there's less technical jobs, more women will be in the organization, versus saying, how do we make sure that women are applying for the technical jobs or going into these technical fields? So sort of as Kristin mentioned, sort of working with high school students, even sort of pre-COVID, my team was working with middle school students in Boston Public Schools, because middle school is sort of when STEM interest sort of starts to wane, especially for young girls. And so it's sort of like, how do you keep that pipeline going so that they're going to want the most technical of the technical jobs, and not sort of just lean towards the jobs like I started in, which were sort of training and implementation and workflows, and sort of left all the technical stuff to another group of people? How do we make sure that we continue to have women in those technical jobs, and not just on the other side of it? And I think that's the piece that I think about even with the question, is how do we force sort of the men in the organization to deal with the communications and the training and the things that are the more soft skill side of some of these technical roles, where you see a lot of times them sort of pushing the woman to like, well, why don't you handle these topics, right? Because you're going to be good at them, and we're going to be over here sort of, you do the documentation, we'll be over here doing the coding. And then like, let's make sure we're swapping some of that and making sure that we're not even in a technical environment sort of, separating by gender sort of what the tasks are. So, hopefully, we don't have to use the tech job changing as a way to increase, women in the workplace, and we're able to just really push them into all aspects of any of the jobs that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in with on that comment?
Yeah, sure. Naomi, I like what you said, and that was a good catch about on the question. And I really think today my role, I head up cloud infra and security. So solutions for customers horizontally, right? Irrespective. Now, I can only sell better, I can convince customers better because I've dirtied my hands on technology, right? I don't code today, but I think that's very important what you said, right? Even if there are certain ancillary skills that are required, right, to do something at the top there. And those skills, till you dirty your hands, you can never challenge people in programs. And I think that's very important. I almost got goosebumps, but that's very important that to drive that message to people that don't just think of being somewhere without having worked on the ground. I think that's really important, and be challenged and challenge themselves or ourselves, right? To get into the 50,000 feet deeper versus being more wider and broader.
Yeah. Kristin, is there anything you want to add on that?
Look, I think, the role of technology is going to change, the way that we all work, with AI and automation. I think that, repetitive and manual tasks are just going to be replaced. And we're going to have to work side by side with AI because it's going to, just augment, the capabilities that we have. And, I think it will support and enable different technology roles, like cybersecurity analysts or software testers and IT support. So on the technology side, I think that's where it's going. The one thing I would add is, on the hybrid remote work, I think that this has been amazing for women, quite frankly. And I think that the hybrid work and remote work arrangements are here to stay. And, I think that, that creates opportunity for women in technology also.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's go on to the next question, which again, we kind of segued nicely into by talking about digital transformation, but obviously it's become a big buzz phrase, and it means different things to different people. So let's answer, how have you helped your organization digitally transform over the years? And aside from your EHR platform, what technologies have had the most impact to your organization? So Naomi, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
Sure. I mean, I think COVID has helped healthcare adopt sort of digital transformation tools, adopt these digital tools. It really forced that more like agile approach, where in my world, I think of digital as being, tools that are going to continuously improve and that we may, iterate on with you. And that obviously had to happen in COVID constantly. So I do think helping the organization adopt that much more agile approach of I'm giving you a minimal viable product and we're going to have to keep making it better as we go throughout COVID was great, where we had sort of, attestation tools for, your symptoms and things like that, that were, really effective, I think, during the height of the pandemic. I do think from my perspective, something we were able to plan a little more than anything COVID related was sort of the implementation of CRM tools. And so we started, with CRM technology for our call centers back in, 2018 was our first go live. We've recently upgraded and changed solutions this past year. And I think tying all of that with marketing and sort of that whole, marketing through to the call center, to the new patient growth is really a place where we've put a lot of effort and has probably made the most impact to the organization from a, showing and being able to tie sort of how we are bringing new patients into the organization. What does that look like? How do we improve our processes? How do we improve our data and our metrics and all of those aspects of bringing in CRM? So I'd say, those COVID helped for sure. So there's some positive silver lining to that. And then I would say, other than EHRs, I think CRM is a big one for us that has made a lot of impact in the last few years.
Yeah. And being ahead of the game, or at least ahead of COVID, certainly made an impact, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Kristin, what about you? Just thoughts on digital transformation, how you've helped your organization digitally transform.
Sure. I mean, I agree with Naomi and what she said about, the acceleration of technology. So, our focus has been on AI and automation technologies also as a very high priority. We have a number of decision support, predictive models that we've implemented, in our clinical sphere. We're very much focused on robotic process automation. And, we're also exploring and just operationalizing, GPT for large language models for our researchers. So that has been a huge area of focus for us, as well as the cloud and, closing down our data centers, consolidating and, moving our applications to the cloud. And I think that that's going to, increase our agility and scalability and enable innovation. On the digital transformation piece, we took a step back and really looked at, what we wanted to achieve as a health system in mid-22 regarding digital. And so, we developed a comprehensive roadmap, focusing on access, care navigation, virtual health, and enhanced digital scheduling. And, we came up with a robust organizational change management plan, governance structure, to ensure that, we're making decisions, based on data. So it's there's been a lot of work that has happened in the last 3 years, but, it's been an amazing process.
Yeah, and I know that Nitha, obviously it's a bit different from your perspective, but if you want to just address the question in whatever way fits most.
Sure, Kate. So a couple of points, right? Internally, within Persistent, we've been focusing, we were a little, or we are a little ahead of the curve, so to say, because we catered to hundreds of customers. So we have to be prepared for that worst case. So for example, Kristin, you mentioned about hybrid COVID teaching, enabling the digital acceleration. Yes, while we contract with customers, we have to be ready for eventualities, for pandemics, and so on and so forth. So I would say we were a little ahead of the curve that way, but yes, from a digital transformation perspective, I would like to talk about what we do for our customers, and in terms of, out of the box, even when a customer says, this is what I want from you. I want a solution for patient engagement as an example, right? There is automation built into the solution, right? What we can do, it's not only about just providing, developers and a crew and so on and so forth, but trying to give them a roadmap and a vision as to how we will graduate through the, through the term of the engagement and so on and so forth. So digital transformation is big. Like I said in my introduction, we are, a digital transformation partner. But we really think that both internally, you have to practice what you preach. So it's not about telling customers what they can do or what we can do to them, but to tell them that we drink our own champagne, is even more better. So adopting all of that and trying to keep our customers ahead of the curve in terms of the latest and greatest from technology principles or partners that we have, and even kind of keeping them up to date as far as how we could evolve the engagement that's there, developer productivity or whatever, there's quite a few offerings from all the hyperscalers and other technology principles to make things, to help deliver more optimized and, a better experience for our customers.
Actually, I want to go to an audience question. And I'm just going to read it for you. I love what Naomi had to say about distribution of tasks and making sure male leaders are also taking ownership of power skills rather than soft skills. So can we get into that a little more, just as far as maybe how that can happen or what your experiences have been?
I mean, I can start to sort of say, I think I have seen, not in my organization, but sort of in other organizations, where, a sort of set of leaders are there, and there's sort of this expectation that as we do our org chart, we're putting the female leader with the, you're going to own these things, because we're going to actively admit that these other leaders aren't as good at it as you are. Well, in my organization, I think we think about, what is the expectation of every role, and those sort of skills around, appropriately communicating, being able to, present on topics in layman's terms and not just from a technical perspective, understanding sort of from a, versatilist perspective, sort of the upstream and downstream of your work. Any of those things that I think a lot of times, or maybe historically, have sort of been seen as, happening on the analyst side and maybe not on the technical side, sort of also has lent itself to be more sort of women are better at it, because there were more analysts on the women's side, more women on the analyst side. And so, we like to set expectations by job role, and it's not sort of, it's not okay if a senior leader in my organization, cannot present at a VP level meeting or at a board meeting. We need to make sure that those sort of skill sets are across the board, and you should expect the same of your technical teams as you do as sort of non-technical teams. So, from my perspective, it's really looking at the job descriptions and sort of as you're interviewing and bringing people on, and also giving people those opportunities, or setting that expectation that they're going to participate in a certain way, and participate, with your camera on and doing a presentation, even if it's internal to the department, to ensure that they're using those skills and that they don't get rusty, and we don't sort of just let, one person always sort of do the talking for the rest of the team. So I'm not sure how others are doing it in their organizations.
Yeah, I was actually going to say it all goes back to the job description, and we've been going through actually a whole exercise on career ladders, job descriptions, and it's ultimately, it then comes back to accountability and making sure that people are actually doing what the job description says that they're going to do, as you outlined. So thank you.
And that can't just be the CIO. That has to be, this has to be throughout leadership. Yeah, very interesting. Nitha, do you have any thoughts on this?
Not on the question, but I see the other question. How do you think, is it okay for me to get to that? But I do agree with what Naomi and Kristin had to say. And there's one point that we service providers like us master, it's called cross-training, right? We do, so I like the question, and I like, the way my co-panelists have answered it, but cross-training is key, right? That might not be your most important role, but then it's important to get cross-trained and understand and be able to contribute better and understand better. So, but I'll just go to this one. How do we think? I like this question. How do you think we will make sure that the code developed for AI technologies does not have gender bias built in? That's a great one. And there are fairness metrics tools that we use or are incorporated while we do this, that will spit that out immediately if there is an indication of bias towards either gender or any other aspect. There are tools from the larger hyperscalers themselves. I don't want to name any tools here, but there are tools that this has been thought through, as we've been making progress on the generative AI side.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, sorry, Kate. I was just
no,
going to say
just-
100%
yeah.
agree on that, because, you know, we have tools, but we also have an AI ethics governance structure in place at our organization where, you know, any kind of AI predictive model, you know, we have an entire intake and review of that particular model, whether it's vendor or whether it's something that's being developed internally. And, you know, we want to make sure that there is no bias in any of these models before we put it into clinical practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And sadly, as we know, it's not just gender bias when it comes to
Right.
AI.
That's correct.
Okay. So let's go to the next question. Let's see. Okay. So as far as the limitations, barriers, or entrenched way of doing things in healthcare, what needs to be overcome in order to maximize the benefits of technology? I know that this can go in a lot of different directions, but Kristin, do you have what are your thoughts on this as far as those limitations?
Look, I think tracking value realization, you know, from my perspective, you know, metrics and data are crucial when we talk about maximizing, you know, benefits of technology, and you've got to be able to measure it. So you've got to be able to define and baseline and trend that value realization and be able to speak to the business about that. And I think that that is an area that, you know, technology leaders and others need to, you know, really get better at in healthcare. I also think change management. When we're adopting new technologies that require significant changes in workflow and training or cultural shifts in the organization, and, you know, just overcoming that resistance and, you know, putting together a comprehensive change management plan, getting that continuous feedback from the stakeholders is critical. So I think we have to foster a culture that embraces, you know, technology advancements. And again, going back to organizational culture, I think that, you know, we also have to have a culture of innovation and agility. And we've got to encourage that at all levels of the organization, and have an open and transparent communication and, you know, collaboration between everyone at the organization. So those are 3 areas I think that in healthcare we can do better.
Naomi, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I agree with Kristin, and I do think the culture change management piece is a big one. If you think about healthcare, especially now, though, you know, there's such a resource constraint and shortage, nursing shortage and other things now with post-COVID. But if you think about it, even pre-COVID, you know, we have, you know, multi-generational people, you know, staffing, right? So we have, you know, younger folks who've sort of grown up with the internet and, you know, have a phone attached to their hand. And we have other people who sort of are still struggling a little bit with, you know, their desktop, right? So really thinking about how do you manage change with that, with all of those stakeholders, and being clear about sort of how do you best approach you know, all of the end users in your organization, I think is something that we struggle with when we're trying to roll out tools. I do think that new sort of more digital tools that focus on sort of ease of use and user experience are going to actually be better and easier for us to roll out to sort of all of these different user types or personas in the organization. So I think that's going to help us, but I think that's been a barrier for folks as you're trying to roll it out, that you've got all of these, you know, different levels, you know, everybody from data science all the way down to, you know, folks who aren't used to sort of using a certain type of equipment. So, you know, that span of end user, I think is part of that cultural shift that we have, that we'll be going through over time, and really getting people to engage with technology. I think remote work has encouraged that as well, because no longer did you come in, sit down, and there was your computer that somebody put out for you and kept clean. You're responsible now. You're home, so you're responsible. So I think that'll help us, but had historically been a limitation. And I do think finance finances are going to be tough. So, you know, a lot of organizations are in a tough spot, sort of post COVID at this point. And, you know, a lot of these digital tools are not cheap, right? So how do we really spend our money sort of the best way that we can to achieve the best outcomes for our organization? Combining that, you know, plan with who are end users and what culture can we bring to this organization? How do we make change in our organization, you know, sort of come together is sort of the biggest challenges, but also means we have the most opportunity to sort of make a big difference in all of our organizations. You know, if we can overcome, you know, sort of the end user challenges and or, you know, cultural challenges and use our money wisely, we really can make a big difference in the organization.
Yeah, really great points about change management, and also about how, you know, when everything did switch over with COVID, there really wasn't a choice. So it kind of did push people, but you know, it's just, that's really interesting how that unfolded. Nitha, do you want to give this question some?
Sure, absolutely. 2 points. The first one, which my co-panelists alluded to, and we call it in our world, we call it OCM, Organizational Change Management. So, you know, making sure you're taking the organization along the journey versus intimidating them. So that's one part which is very, very crucial. The other part, and this is related to maximizing the benefits of technology. So Kate, this was one of my favorite questions. And as a provider, as a partner, as a service provider to my customers, the focus, the ability to execute POCs, proof of concepts, faster than anybody else, or you know, meeting the customer's expectations. So Naomi just mentioned about, you know, what do we do? What path do we select? You know, how do we make that choice, and so on and so forth. And to be able to enable customers to make that choice, build those assets, accelerators, and frameworks that are required that will enable customers to make a faster choice and take advantage of technology that exists there, whether it's low code, no code, or anything else, right? But those POCs are precious. And those are the 2 points that I think, you know, that mattered most. And I'm happy both the co-panelists spoke about the organizational change management aspect. We internally at Persistent had a huge culture initiative that we launched that was run by an external party, not because of anything, because Kristin, like you said, right, COVID taught us many things. Right. And we knew what got us here will not get us there, will not take us to the next milestone. And so we wanted to take the organization along together, right? How do we onboard associates? How do we onboard employees today versus how we did it before COVID, and so on and so forth? How do we make the employee experience better? How do we make customer experience better, right? What are we yet missing? And we incorporated all of that into that culture workshop. Hope that was helpful.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to do our Ask a Co-Panelist, and there's so many topics we've covered, you know, change management, job descriptions, coaching, everything. But this is your chance to kind of pick the brains of your co-panelists. So I don't know who wants to jump in first, but yeah, just a chance to ask something that they've maybe been dealing with and provide some guidance.
Kate, if you don't mind, I can jump in, and I have a question for Kristin. Kristin, you mentioned about hybrid work, and you also stated that this has helped women, you know, for those who have had that crunch, right? That where this was an obstacle, being at a place at a particular time. But I see, and I think from your perspective, from an enterprise perspective, it makes sense. But I have customers who want to see people in person, you know, the touch and the feel and so on and so forth. You know, we have made progress, but we are trying to kind of bring that happy blend, or, you know, that we arrive at that happy medium, so to say. Do you want to throw a little more light on what you said and what your perspectives are in the healthcare space, in the space that you are in?
Yeah, sure. Look, I think it's a balance. Not all of our department is, 100% remote. I would say, probably 25% is, and, the rest is hybrid. Myself, I'm in the office, 4 days a week. So I think it depends on your role. But as it relates to, I think, really supporting women in the workforce, the ability to, if you're working from home, dropping your child off at school, picking your child up from home, being able to, have a flexible working environment where you can go to, see, your son or daughter's play at school. A lot of those opportunities were not available when you were in the office 5 days a week. So I think having a flexible environment, focusing on, is the work being done? I think requires a different management style. And in fact, we're putting all of our management team through, training around, how do you, manage remote and hybrid team members? Because, it is a little different from when you can see everyone in the office 4 or 5 days a week. So I think it's the flexibility. And I think that, making sure that you focus on outcomes and not, is everyone there like 9 to 5 is the key.
Thank you, Kristin.
Good question. And I can absolutely say it as a parent that it really does make a difference when you have that flexibility. And you can, but you've also established that you're going to get your work done. You're going to be where you need to be, but having the flexibility has been huge for me personally.
That's great. I think flexibility and balance, right? And I think the last piece I would like to add is don't take advantage of the situation, right? When you're needed and when you have an opportunity, be there. And when you need that flexibility, take it and be there, because it's all about balance between our personal and professional lives.
Yeah. And I mean, the only other point I would make is 99% of team members, follow the rules, right? It's, there may be only a very small percentage that, may try to take advantage of it. But, we've seen it as a differentiator for us as an organization. And, it's been a good way to attract talent also.
And kind of a follow-up to that, is there anything you do to make sure that people who are remote are, being kept in the fold, whether it's inviting them to certain events? Like, is that something that you do address?
Yeah, we're trying to be very intentional about, when we bring team members to the office. So, having either, monthly, like specific lunch and learns, or, bringing in specific teams, to have an all day team building. I think the key is intentional, not just, having people turn up to the office, randomly and not actually be, meeting with their team members. So that's what we've been trying to do, is just focusing on, team events and just being intentional about it. And people do want to come into the office, where there's a specific purpose and, where they're going to get value.
Right.
And I would just jump in to say, we've also tried to be clear that we realize some of that on-site time is social. Like that, because it's sort of newer, maybe for some people to come on site, or sort of there were ebbs and flows. We obviously had some staff who were on site throughout the whole pandemic. Others sort of were remote through most of it. That we need to acknowledge that some part of that, when you're first starting to come back on site, or if you plan a team meeting that's going to be on site, that you're planning a social aspect to it, that we want to give people that opportunity to spend that sort of social time. We also, during COVID and now continuously, have also set times that are purposefully social on Zoom or on whatever sort of remote, whatever platform you use, where there is time, whether it's within your team or I do 2 sort of social things, one a week and one a month, that is sort of where you can drop in and see me and talk to me just like you would have if you were in the office. And so so that we're giving opportunity, whether you're on site or not on site, to sort of also still see and hear from your leadership team. So I think that that's really important to make sure you not just sort of send a bunch of emails, which I also do that, but also set that time where people could, you know, pop in and say hello and meet all your new people who are being onboarded potentially remotely. So being really, as Kristin said, sort of thoughtful and you know that you're doing it for these specific reasons, and very deliberate about what you're doing that's on site versus remotely, I think is what will be effective, and sort of hopefully what keeps people connected, you know, sort of as we move forward in this very hybrid world.
Yeah. Naomi, did you want to pose any question to your panelists?
So I, you know, to either one, something we didn't talk about yet today that I sort of think about often, frankly, is imposter syndrome. So, you know, it's a sort of a construct that many women deal with, where they sort of don't realize sort of how much they sort of are valued or bring to an organization, or the concept that they might read a job description and sort of not believe that they sort of belong in that role. So to either or both of you, you know, have you had to deal with that for yourself, or maybe for someone you've coached? And do you have any sort of advice for the audience on that? It's, you know, usually a hot topic when we talk about sort of women in tech, especially, that there's this sense that they don't quite belong or don't quite measure up all the time. So curious sort of your thoughts on the concepts around imposter syndrome.
Tough one. Kristin, you want to go first?
Look, I think that, you know, all of us have experienced times where, you know, you go into the meeting and you're the only woman in the meeting, right? And so, you know, and that can be challenging to sometimes be, you know, heard with your perspective. And things are changing, you know, I think in a very positive way. I think what is so important for women to understand is that, and also to self-promote them, self-promotion. And it's something that I think, Naomi, you talked about, you know, at the beginning, that you've got to self-advocate. And, you know, you can be working very, very hard on, you know, your job and doing excellent work. But unless you, you know, make sure that people know about it and, you know, highlight the work, you know, you could be in the same job in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think it's about making sure that you're advocating for yourself. I think secondly, you know, having that network around you, whether it's other women, other mentors that, you know, you can speak to, and, you know, really have those honest conversations about how you're feeling about certain situations. For example, reading a job description and thinking, you know, you may not be the right person, you know, you should bounce that off someone else and make sure that, you know, you're not, you know, having that imposter syndrome.
Yeah. And Naomi, I agree with Kristin on the network side. I've always surrounded myself and advocate about having a network, you know, that you can rely on for, you know, really candid feedback. I think that is, you know, that is one way we could avoid the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, very well said. And actually just having you guys come on here and talk about your experiences, that's huge. It's so important. So thank you all for doing that. I think that's about it. It's all we have time for. Really great discussion. Thank you all for being so open and, you know, talking about this very important topic. Just a few things. You will receive an email when our on-demand recording is ready. For continuing education credits, please see the final slide. If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming event, contact Nancy Wilcox. And to register for upcoming webinars, visit our website, Health System CIO. And thank you so much to our panel, Naomi, Kristin, and Nitha. Really enjoyed this. Thank you so much to our sponsor, Persistent Systems, and thanks to all who joined us today. Everyone have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.